A very good morning to one and all, my dear children. My dear children, we have finished for the first chapter, question answers, textual question answers, and the fill in the blanks you will do it by your own, as well as observe the map and write the answers that you have to do by your own. We'll go for the second chapter, that is sources of history. Here, sources of Indian history, chapter number 2. In this, we are going to study about the material sources, written sources, oral sources, sources of ancient Indian history, precautions to be taken while writing history. So, in this, first we are going to study about sources of Indian history. Here it is said that a number of objects used by our ancestors and some inscriptions from past still exist, are still seen. These sources help us to understand history, the customs and traditions, folk, literature and historical documents help us to understand history. All these are known as history. In this we are going to study about the material sources, written sources and oral sources. Here material sources. What are they? Man uses a variety of things in his day-to-day life, and these things which he is using in his day-to-day life or artifacts, man which is using a variety of things in his day-to-day life, they are called as artifacts. And we can decide the period of ancient artifacts like earthen pots by studying the shape, color, designs, and on the ancient pots hearths, as well as we are getting some information about the diet of the people. We got some information that is about the diet of the people from the remains of the food grains, what they were eating beforehand, the seeds, some foods they must have eaten and they must have thrown those seeds, as well as the bones of the animals which were found in the excavations. We also find some coins and the seals which were found in those excavations. These artifacts, articles, monuments or the remains are called as material sources of ancient history. Now here it is 2.2, that is written sources. In this we have recorded the events and they express some emotions in the paintings on the rocks. Later man used symbols and signs to record their thoughts as well as the ideas. Then thousands of years later a script was written or developed. In the beginning man wrote on the potsherds and baked bricks by using pointed objects. He also used the bhujrapatra, bark or birch tree to write. As man's knowledge and experience increased, he began to use various forms of writing. The proceedings in the royal court were recorded in writing. Then the edicts, decrees and deeds of kings were also inscribed on the stones of the copper plates. Different poems of literature such as poems, plays, travelogues and some scientific writings developed. All these together form the sources of history. Here, oral sources. What have we studied in that? Oral, that is ovies, folk songs, folk tales and similar literature were passed on from generation to generation by word to mouth. The author of this unwritten literature was unknown or yet is unknown. This type of literature preserved by oral tradition forms the oral sources of history. Is sources of ancient Indian history. In this we have a large number of material sources we have studied, oral sources as well as of written sources of ancient Indian history. In this, that is, in the beginning the Vedas were not in the written form and now it is coming availing in the written form. Next, that is precautions to be taken while writing history. It is very necessary to write or take some precautions when we are writing history. It needs to be examined critically, very carefully. Then we have to go through the conclusions drawn on the basis of the various journey documents. We have to cross-check it, and it is very important in writing history. We have to cross-check and then we have to write that history. So my dear children, now we'll go for question answers based on chapter number 2. Here it is. Answer in one sentence. In the past, what materials were used for writing history? If you have written, you can recheck that, my dear children. If you have not written, please write the answers. So, man used, what did he use? What materials were used? So, man used pointed reeds to write on potsherd, unbaked bricks and burja patra. Man used pointed reeds to write on potsherds, unbaked bricks and burja patra. Next question was, what information is obtained from Vedic literature? So what information were you getting from the Vedic literature? We get the information about the history of ancient India from the period of from 1500 BC onwards from Vedic literature. So here again I'll tell the answer. We are getting the information, or we get information about the ancient history of India for the period from 1500 BC onwards from the Vedic literature. Third one, which literature is preserved by oral sources? So here the folk tales, the folk songs, the Ovis, as well as the early Vedic, Jain and Buddhist literature were presented by oral tradition. I'll repeat the answer again. The folk tales, the folk songs, the Ovis, as well as the early Vedic, Jain and Buddhist literature were presented by oral tradition. Next it is given, classify the sources as material sources and oral sources as well as the written sources. So here is given, first one is given to us, that is copper plate. So where will that copper plate come? It will come in the written sources. Written sources, you'll write copper plate. Second is folk tales. Folk tales will come in oral sources. You have to write in oral. Next is pottery. Pottery will come in your material sources. Beads, B-E-A-D-S. Beads will is also your material sources. Travelogues. Travelogues is your written sources. Ovis. Ovis is your oral sources. Inscriptions is your written sources. Vedic literature, again you write in written sources. Stupa is your material sources. Coins, material sources. Puranas, written sources. So this you have to write again in your notebook. If you have not written, please write it. Next, observe the picture of the earthen pots and try to make it similar, that you will find out. Next, observe any coin and write the following things. This you have to do by your own. You have to observe the coin, look at the coin and write what is inscribed on the coin, which metal is it used, which year of that coin is, symbol on the coin, which symbol can you see, the picture, the language, the shape and denomination of the coin. This all question number 4 you have to do by your own. And now, do you know a few things by heart? Present them in your group, some any prayer, poem, tables. Okay, this is your activity, that is collect pictures and photos of material, written sources and exhibit them. Now you have to collect some pictures and you have to put it in your notebooks, and you have to write that which source it is. Is it a material source or a written source? So this you have to write in your notebooks, my dear children. Thank you. Have a great day. Stay home. Stay safe.